Hey everyone, and welcome to Almost Cancelled. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about Homecoming Season 2, Episodes 4 and 5. They are called Soap and Meters, respectively. So, full spoilers for the two episodes, as always. So, we have a continuation of Episode 3 here. Surprisingly so, I thought that by the time we got to episode 5, when I was watching these two back to back, I was like, wait, we've just been in a straight line, timeline wise, since we went back to, the earlier part of the timeline in episode 3.
Yeah, which is a little disappointing. It feels very linear.
It does feel very linear. It feels kind of weird, actually, and like I get like having one episode that kind of like has like a one episode thing, and at the end of episode 1 it sort of darts back, and then from there we stay there until we get caught back up again. But it felt especially weird that we do that at the end of episode 2, because that implied to me that we're going to maybe be jumping back and forth, or maybe something else. It just feels a bit, yeah, oddly linear is, I guess, how I'd describe it.
I think, again, this is another one where it feels worse because the first season was so fragmented in its narrative structure. So this, it's not like, compared to some TV shows, it's less linear, right? Because we went back in time for at all, beyond just a flashback. But for this show, it feels very straightforward.
It's an interesting thing in the middle, I think, because you're right that it does feel weird because season 1 was such a puzzle in terms of its construction, and this, by its nature, is a lot more just kind of like, it feels like it's either it should have done something completely different and had no timeline elements at all, or matched in some way what season 1 was doing. The way it's done it here, where it kind of is done like a half measure, where it's got a little bit in the like sort of in present, then it jumps back, but because it's been, I think bizarrely it feels like it should be cutting back and forth kind of between the two, because there's obviously at this point there's clearly more story in the build up to where episode 1 starts than there was post episode 1. I think that's very clear after having watched 3, 4 and 5. So to me it feels like what really should have been happening is that episodes 1 and 2 should have been sprinkled in little mysterious parts sort of throughout the episode so far.
Yeah, I agree with that, because I feel like at the current pace there's probably only going to be one episode after after the events of episode 2.
Yeah, because I mean, this episode ends where we still have one major event to happen to get us caught up to where we started, which is, of course, the actual mind wipe and what happens in the actual conflict with Walter. Obviously, we spend a lot of time with her and Walter in episode 5, which is the second of the two that we watch for this review, which gets us somewhat up to speed. We have the fight in the bar. We have her meeting him for the first time. I mean, episode 4 ended with the sort of the cliffhanger being her waiting in the police station. Actually, that was the start of episode 5. This is the weird thing about watching two of them back to back, is you kind of blur the start and the end of the middle parts
4
together.
was mostly all the Audrey stuff.
Yeah, mostly Audrey stuff with Geist and her kind of with the military. Joan Cusack showing up out of nowhere.
Yeah, it caught me off guard too.
Yeah. But yeah, the point being is that it's likely that we'll spend episode 6 on that event, and whatever Audrey's side of that will be like prepping for the party. If there is any, I mean, it could just be Alex and Walter for episode 6, given that this episode kind of ended, like we got to the point where she was in charge, she got the office, and she was giving out orders to do this party, which is the party we see in episode 2.
Yeah.
And obviously the state of Geist and why he was so upset is obviously a lot more apparent given these last 2 episodes as well. I think like my sentiments, annoyingly, are kind of unchanged from before, in that it's alright and it's perfectly watchable, but it's surprisingly unsurprising.
It is. I actually feel that even more after we've properly spent some time with Waller. Now that we've actually, spent some time with his headspace, where he is, beyond just a little bit here or there, I feel even more like I don't think I needed this.
There's nothing really in these 2 episodes specific, because I think episode 3 benefited from, it gave us such a different character to who we maybe thought that Jackie / Alex might be, right? We kind of like had a blank slate before, but then we got this, oh no, she's actually kind of not evil. Evil's maybe not the right word, but certainly more morally grey,
ambiguous
than we would have expected before. And her whole goal in this couple of episodes, by the time we get to the end of episode 4, she's made the choice to go and deal with Walter. Go and deal with the fact that he's asking questions, because Walter's whole thing is that because he didn't know about this head injury, or he thought he had this head scar and it's not there, he goes down to the VA place, asks to see his own medical record, which is like a very reasonable request for someone to see their own medical record.
Yeah, this felt weird to me. Is this a thing? Like, I mean, I'm not saying it's not, but it just surprised me that it felt like a plot contrivance, even though I'm not sure it is. They might be dead on exactly how it works.
It might be. I feel this is a cultural thing that maybe we just can't. That said, I mean, I assume I can go down to the hospital and ask for my own medical record. I've never tried it.
Yeah, it's a freedom of information request.
Oh, so yeah, it's fair play here. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
But yeah. So I mean, I wonder, because the thing is, the guy says that if he keeps saying it's a private contractor, so he can't tell them what they did. I assume that if they'd done it themselves, he could have just told them.
Maybe, yeah.
I
think it's
that's
weird because like he's got the information on the screen. He's reading what they did, presumably, at least what they claim they did.
Well, that's the thing. I didn't think he did until Walter actually yelled out, "You've got it there on the screen, just tell me." Because I thought up until that point, the guy was just being really awkward and just not clearly saying, "Look, it's a private contractor. It doesn't tell me what they did. It just says."
I did too, but
Yeah.
then the guy doesn't rebut that claim, so I have to assume that it does say that there.
He does have that awkward smell at one point, though, that almost implies that he's enjoying being a dick and making Walter's life difficult.
Maybe. Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a weird thing to compare to, but
I read that smile a little bit differently, admittedly. I read that as more just, this is the customer service training, what you're told to do. Just smile and nodle and it'll be okay.
It might be. Maybe we haven't watching too much What We Do in the Shadows, because this is maybe a weird comparison, but I was getting Colin Robinson energy vampire almost from the way this guy smelled that. I'm like, he's enjoying the red tape and he's enjoying making him go through these steps.
I get that. I didn't get enjoy. I got, this is a guy who has had the bare minimum customer service training and is told this is what you do. You give them what they want or tell them no, and then you say goodbye and give them a smile. That was the vibe I got from it.
I mean, sure, we could sit here and debate that. It doesn't really matter.
No, it doesn't. But
the point being is that he puts in this request, which is going to take 8 to 12 weeks, and this gets back to Audrey that this request went through, and this was after she'd had this hearing where she goes and tells everyone. And she wasn't there to actually try and sell this berry as a product. She was there on the behest of Geist to go in and basically just fix this and make sure they're not in trouble. But of course, Joan Cusack. Every time I say Joan Cusack, I want to say Joan Crawford, and obviously that's a very different person. But for some reason, my head, my brain just wants to say Crawford.
That's the first Joan you go to.
Well, Joan C. Yes, Joan.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yes, but she's standing there. Her character name is Bunda, which is a really weird name. To the point where
I appreciated there was a point where it reminded me how you said it, because someone said Bunda and they went no Bunda, and I went, oh okay. So it kind of stuck in my head a bit.
Well, I think that's the point, is that it's such a weird name that they even kind of like made the characters even react to it as if that's a stupid name, without saying that out loud. But that's kind of the implication of the way they say it. But she's there and she's just asking these questions like, wait, so was there side effects? All these soldiers who were released and went through the process. It's like, well, no, I mean they're all back serving again or whatever. And she's like, so none of them came back with side effects or problems or had any relapses or anything. She's like, well, no, technically no, none of that happened. And she's like, oh, and you can see the light bulb going off in her head. She's like, well, we can use this then. This is a great idea.
Like, so you're saying it works?
Yeah. So Geist gets very upset because Bunda comes in and basically says, no, you can't take all this away. This is a military piece of technology. We own
this now.
We were going to pay you, but then of course he says he wants nothing to do with it, so then they sort of force his hand instead. And Audrey kind of ends up being put in charge because she's the one who lazies with her, basically. Like, she's the one who's wanting to play ball. And Geist isn't happy about it. You can see Geist's opinion of Audrey just deteriorating over the course of these 2 episodes.
Yeah, it started with, she had a moral center, and that's what he thought, and that's why she was, reporting Colin and kind of going through this, and was like, she was doing the right thing, was what he thought. And then by the end of this, she just wants to do her own thing.
She's just a shark. She just wants the success. And I mean, I probably one of the best scenes of these 2 episodes, honestly, might be the scene where she's sitting talking to the employees. The same woman who was making fun of her or being condescending back in like episode 2 or 3, whatever that episode was. But she's sitting there with that woman and she's saying, hey, your personality is a problem, so you're going to have to either hide it or change it. Like, that's basically it. And just sort of shoving this in her face.
Very blunt.
Yeah, basically playing the power card. And what's so funny is that Bunda repeatedly says, oh, you should be running this place. You've got the right ideas. You think in the right way. And the whole time I was like, I feel like she's in over her head. I feel like the entire time it feels like someone who's pretending to be the boss who isn't really.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but she's just jumped from a secretary to running this entire thing.
I mean, I don't think that was a job title, but sure, yeah.
Well, maybe not, but it was very much what it seemed to be, and now she's kind of in charge, and it's like, no, I'm not saying that secretaries are not valued. I'm just saying it's a very different skill set to jump to that immediately.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't even thinking about that. I was just thinking about the way she handles herself, to her confidence in the way she speaks. I was thinking about just all of this gloating in front of these employees. I feel like it's all here to sort of come back at her later. Like, she's going to have a fall from grace because she's really just in over her head. And you know, I feel like that's where it's probably heading. Or if it isn't, then it should be.
If it isn't, then that presumably is a third season plot.
If we get a third season,
if there is one, yeah,
which is possible. It depends what their plans were coming out of this season too. But yeah, that's, I mean, her side of things is basically dealing with that, and this is kind of, I think, where I was having maybe some of my apathy with what's going on, is that the entire time Bunda was out there getting her tour and talking to Geist about everything, like, I felt like I knew exactly where this was going the second the scene started, and it felt like it took a long time for the characters to kind of reach those points.
I think Bunda is one of the least interesting characters this show has ever presented, in that she's so immediately obvious exactly what she is.
I think
and
that can
just like
well, I think that combined with the fact that she's also one of the worst characters this show has had, because I feel like the Joan Cusack sense of humor that she brings to a role, I don't think she's a bad actress. I think she's great in certain types of roles, but I don't think she was necessarily suitable for this show. She kind of took me out of it immediately, because I didn't recognize her at first. 'Cause, I mean, I don't mean this in a bad way, but she's aged a lot since like I've seen her in other things. She was in a little bit of a series of unfortunate events, so I don't know if it's just that they've dressed her completely differently with makeup and stuff, but she visibly wasn't what I recognized. It was the voice.
You hear a voice. Yeah.
It was as soon as she started speaking, because you saw, I mean, I guess you kind of see it on the background first, but you're not really drawing your attention to it until she starts speaking. So even though I didn't visually recognize her, the voice told me who it was, and immediately it felt kind of out of place in a way that it didn't fit the entire feel of the show. So every time she came back, and the way she was kind of bantering with Audrey and talking about how, oh, I've got this idea, because it's when they go up the stairs, I think in episode 5, where they're talking about potential applications for the drug and what they could do with it. And she's doing all this kind of speak where she's speaking in riddles, so she won't just outright say what she's saying to Audrey, so Audrey has to figure it out, so Audrey keeps asking questions. That was a frustrating scene for me, because I didn't feel like it was actually that mysterious or exciting what she was trying to say. Audrey just felt she was slow in getting what was kind of been brought to her.
Which is part of, I guess, what makes Audrey feel like she's not really suited for this role at the moment. Because like you say, when they were going up the stairs, she was like, well, just think of the applications. There's all these things. And it was essentially boils down to, highest bidder can do what they want with it. Yeah. And it was pretty quickly apparent that that's what it was. And Audrey took a while, like, getting to that.
It was a tedious scene to get through. I felt like the writing was far behind where I think most people watching it are going to be thinking. They're already going to be there. The character's just kind of so two-dimensional that it doesn't, which is fine in short bursts if she's just there to serve a plot purpose and no more, but the scene took considerable time. It was spending time on it as if it was an important scene, and I don't think it really gave as much of value. And then you jump over to the stuff with Walter and Alex, and she gets him out of jail, convinces him to go for a drink, and tries to talk to him about, it's under the guise of an evaluation of, because she's from a group called Vets for Vets, which I'm sure is a real thing, but she's claiming to be from it. And we see her, even at the end of the previous episode, we see her making the alias, like, getting the fake tattoo and photoshopping the image. So, and
I really felt at this stage, just the pieces coming together right? Like these are the things that we knew had to happen from those first 2 episodes, and I felt that more, like, not because they were interesting to watch. I just felt like the checkbox of, oh yeah, you saw this.
Yeah, so I guess what you're saying is we didn't necessarily see it in as much detail because we know all these elements. You just have to show enough to show that this is where this is happening.
Yeah, pretty much.
So, because she's sitting there and she's doing a decent enough job talking to him, getting friendly with him. He wants another beer with her. She thinks everything's in the clear because he doesn't remember anything. He doesn't remember the word homecoming. He doesn't talk about any of that stuff. But then, of course, it sort of reverts a little bit when it turns out that he still wants his report back that's coming in like 12 weeks. And then he has a great idea. He's like, oh, you know what? I could probably just drive down to Geist and start asking questions, and maybe they can tell me. Maybe they'll be nice enough to tell me. And she's like, no, you can't do this. And they keep talking, and she and there's a fake out early on, which if I'm going to give it credit for something, there's a fake out early on that I kind of liked, where she expertly kind of brushes past a piece of information that she asks. He asks for her, like, her number or like what regiment she was in or whatever it is, whatever the terminology is.
It was MOS. I don't know what that stands for, but it was that.
But he asked that, and then she kind of responds with a question to imply that he's only asking that because he doesn't want to talk about it. So it was actually really well done because it really came across as convincing. No, you're just asking this because you're trying to avoid the subject. It felt
like a natural deflection to something she didn't have an answer to.
Yeah. But then she actually had the answer like a minute later to bond with him, and it felt like, oh, she actually has done enough research to answer that question properly. But later on, she does slip up, and you can tell the moment she slips up because she's talking about these other people in her squad, and she says, "Oh, you know, like he died, he killed himself," and is trying to convince him to just basically give up and not pursue this. Which again comes back to her feeling kind of scummy that she's trying to talk him out of asking for answers for stuff about his own life.
This goes back to what we saw her do before. This is just what she does.
Yeah, and she's just trying desperately to make this work. And he asks about, I was a sniper, like, you know, what was his record? And she just blurts out, like, was it 1,100 meters, I think she said?
Yeah.
It was something silly.
I'm assuming that's low?
I would assume that's high.
I don't know.
1,100 meters?
For a massive, you know, like a 50 cal sniper.
We're not talking 110 here, we're talking 1,100.
So that's just over a kilometer. But when you're talking about snipers, like,
I don't do kilometers. I've never used kilometers in my life.
That's like less than a mile. This distance that we're talking about here.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, 1,100 is, you know, what, 1,100 meters. So
yes.
Yeah. So it's like 0.7 miles.
That sounded far to me, but I mean, I don't really know what's normal here.
This is just your. I mean, I don't think it's that far for a sniper.
Well, yeah, but
that's within eyelight.
He reacts to this, so this gives her up in some way.
Yeah, I think it's far too short.
Right. Okay.
But I could be wrong. But I mean, you know, that doesn't seem that far to me.
No, you're probably right because I don't know about these things. Don't hit me with kilometers. I don't know kilometers.
Well, the measurement she gave us was in meters, so I have to go with kilometers. That's the natural comparison.
Distance is measured in miles. It's just easier that way.
No, I agree. I have to convert everything to miles.
Yes, and I know that some people are going to, like, some Americans specifically, are going to say, "But aren't you on the metric system?" No, we are for a lot of things, but not distance. Anyway, this gives her up, and he gets very upset. He yells at her. This is kind of the scene that was created that we got hints of when the bartender was really upset at her.
It didn't seem as bad as what the bartender made it out to be.
No, I mean, it kind of just boiled down to her telling me F off as she was leaving, essentially.
Yeah, and then him going, "Oh, well, you F up," and then realising she was leaving anyway. Like, and that was it? I'm like...
Well, that's not why he stopped saying it. He stopped saying it because he realised what he was saying before. It's a family restaurant.
I know, but there was an irony to it because she was already walking away as he was saying it. But it was more just, that was it. It was one little outburst. The way he said it, it made it seem like it was a whole big thing. Like, he used the word fight a couple of times, I think, in that episode, and this was an argument. Fight implied something physical, I think, to me at the time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not that fussed about that so much, but beyond just watching these elements play out to fill in the gaps in the story that we'd heard like hints of isn't as satisfying as I think they think it is. There's a lot of these things where I feel like these details aren't that exciting, and to be honest, watching them play out is just kind of like you said earlier on, it's like a checklist. We're doing a checklist of things.
It's just these are all the things that you heard about in the first 2 episodes. Isn't this exciting? I'm like, not really.
And I don't think the filmmaking is as strong enough to make them exciting on their own. Because I think it could be potentially. I don't think the conceptual idea here is completely at fault.
No, I mean I've seen this idea in other places, I'm sure.
Yeah, I don't think the filmmakers up here, because some people have been people were tweeting at us when we were going to maybe not do the rest of this. People were saying it was Hitchcockian and stuff, and I don't know, I'm not feeling that at all.
I think that's maybe what they want it to be. I think
I'm just not feeling it.
Like there are points where I feel like they're trying with the direction, but like it's still like there's a point in one of these episodes where it does split screen with Audrey on one side and I think it's Alex on the other.
Yeah, it was a really weird moment actually, because it's when she gets off the phone to her and she's walking back to the table to talk to Walter again, and it felt like it's sort of a nothing moment to do the split screen on, to be honest.
Yeah, I think that's what it bothered me. It felt like they were doing the split screen because that's the style of this show, right? But they didn't really understand how to utilize it.
Yeah, or more specifically, when to utilize it. It felt like a really weird nothing moment to use the split screen on and treat it like a dramatic beat. I think it's struggling. It feels like a pale imitator of season 1, and I know some people really like this season, but I would say more of a problem with these 2 episodes necessarily than I did, because I think episode 3 is probably the strongest one.
Yeah, I don't think these are necessarily that much worse. I just think the problems are compounding upon themselves as it goes through the season.
Yeah. Basically, like the key facet of this season for the most part is that we set up all this stuff in episode 1 and 2 of what happened to her before she lost her memory, and we set all these seeds out for stuff that we're going to discover. And like I think at the end of episode 3, that was the one we ended the last review on, was because we had 2 and 3 together. The most exciting thing about it was the idea of sort of realizing, oh hey, seeing what she does in her job, you can kind of like take that extra leap and figure out, okay, she was probably seeing Walter because she's trying to help something to do with Audrey's job. She's trying to like basically cover the tracks of Homecoming because it's going to affect Audrey. And because I had to make that leap myself in that episode, because it sort of presented me just with what she does, it was a satisfying little bit of a sort of like mystery and answer that went together without them spelling it out to me. These 2 episodes, it feels like it's just, like you say, going down the checklist of exactly showing us each beat one thing at a time. Here's how it all links up.
I think the problem is, it comes up to what we were saying right at the start of this episode with the structure as well, is, so they did these 2 episodes at the start and then they flash back and it's like, oh, and here's what really happened. And what really happened, one, there isn't that much time, ultimately, between where we flashed back to and, the final moment that we're going to get to before she wakes up. It's only a matter of a handful of days. And the stuff in those days hasn't been that interesting, to tell you the truth. There's a lot of things that, I mean, sure, it's fine, but a lot of it isn't necessary. And I feel like some of the more interesting stuff would be getting back to after where we left off with episode 2, right? And going in that quote unquote present timeline and seeing what she does next, theoretically, with some of this context now, with of who she is, would be more interesting. I think time could have been more spent in that stuff rather than showing us every little moment before.
Yeah. I mean, you say that. We don't know what's coming next, though. We might not be that impressed with what happens after the...
Well, we might not, no. So... that's very true. I feel like that's just where I am. And a gut reaction, it feels like that should be the more interesting part of the story. Not necessarily that it will be because of however they've written.
I mean, no, we've watched 5 out of 7 now, so we're definitely watching the last 2. We'll see how it ends, and we'll talk about it. But honestly, my opinion of the show at this point, 5 out of 7 episodes in, is that this is a pale imitation of season 1, and there is no goddamn way the last 2 episodes are going to make me think it's even like in the same league as season 1. I
had a friend message me on Facebook last night who, he was watching whatever on Amazon Prime, and an ad came up for Homecoming. And hey, Homecoming, is that an Esmail show? And I went, yeah, it is. Go watch the first season. Just don't necessarily what I was saying. He goes, oh no, I watched the first one when it came out. I just couldn't remember if it was that show. And I was thinking, should I watch the second season? And I just went, nah, don't bother.
Yeah, I wouldn't
That's-
recommend
that-
season 2. I don't think. Honestly,
Yeah, that's where I am.
I don't think the mystery's compelling. I don't think the characters, for the most part, are that compelling. And like I said last time, I think answering that Walter didn't remember anything is actually detrimental to what I liked about the ending of season 1. So honestly, I think when I'm done with this, I'm going to forget it existed, and the end of the story is season 1 ending for me, and I'm going to let that stay ambiguous in my head.
I wish I could.
What do you mean you wish you could?
I don't have that ability to just willfully forget these things.
This is easy because this is like a movie with a sequel where you don't necessarily think of all the shitty sequels to Halloween where you watch Halloween. If you want the end of Halloween 1 to be the end of the story, and many people do, then you can just do that.
No, I get the desire to do that, and I wish I could do that, but I can't. My brain just doesn't let me. It's always there. Once I've seen this, and my brain knows when I'm watching. If I go back and watch Homecoming season 1, when I get to that final beat, my brain will remind me that this is where it goes, and there's no escaping that for me.
Okay, to go back to the Halloween example then, but how do you process that with Halloween, which literally has like 3 different like time strands of sequels?
I haven't seen them all, so it's I've seen Halloween 1 through 4, and then I watched the reboot, and that was it.
That's 2 different strands then, though.
It is.
So which one do you count when you watch Halloween? If you have to count something, which one do you count?
It depends which if I plan on watching sequels or not. If I'm gonna.
That's not an answer. That's a stupid answer.
Well, no, because when I watch Halloween, I'm likely to go and watch 3 and 4 or 2 and 4 with it. So
God.
in my brain, that's the end of the story there, because the other one doesn't happen in that time. I can separate timelines. Okay, but direct sequels are harder.
Your life is horrendous then. If you can't separate a like sequel or sequel season that is directed and created by other people that is inferior and ruins certain things about characters, then I don't want to live as you. Like, that's horrible.
I didn't say it was a good thing. I actively said I wish I could separate them, but I can't. This is once this information is in my brain as this is where the story goes, my brain can't just go, no, it's not. It just doesn't work that way for me.
Yeah, but this is the thing. If it's different people that made it, or it's whatever, then it's like, well, this is basically fan fiction anyway, so I can just ignore it. It's fine. It's a tacked on thing that doesn't count.
No, I get the sentiment. And if it's in a different medium, that's easy to ignore. Like fan fiction, like if it's something written, I can go, oh well, that's written, it doesn't count. If it was a movie, or if it's a TV show that spins off from a movie, it's a TV show, it doesn't count. That's fine. I can my brain can handle that. But if it's a movie with a movie sequel, that exists. Once I've seen it, that's that.
This is stupid. There's no way you can tell me you can watch all 10 Hellraiser sequels and then have to accept all 9 of those sequels as canon when you watch Hellraiser 1. That is absurd.
That's why I only watched the first one.
Yeah, but there's definitely franchises where you end up seeing the crap sequels.
Yeah, and in my brain, they all, maybe not the exact timeline matches together, but details from all of that are quote unquote the future of that film, that story in my brain. There's again, I'm not saying I like this. I'm not saying I do this intentionally. I'm not saying I want this to be the way. I'm just saying this is how my brain processes it, and I can't stop that.
Too many sequels have to ruin the ending of the previous thing to exist because they have to explain why the story can happen. So this is so unhealthy. I do not recommend it. Anyway,
I don't recommend it either.
that is basically, yeah, the ending of episode 5 is that she because none of this has worked, because Walter's getting mad at her, she's had the idea to use the vial of the drug which she took from Audrey, because she's like, Audrey, you don't need this to be successful, and she puts it in her pocket. She throws it in the trash when she gets to the motel, but because Walter's reacted this way, because he's now hostile and won't trust her, she's now going to try and basically sneak it into his system with some food. We ended the episode with her in the supermarket.
Yeah.
Buying, was it a melon I think she was buying?
I think it was a melon. It was a very pale melon. I'm not sure what kind of melon it was, but I was under the assumption it was a melon.
Like a melon. Yeah, that's basically it. So yeah, I mean, I know people were wanting us to do more, and this is why I always feel bad when people like insist we do more of something, and then we end up not liking it that much. I feel like, yeah, is this what you wanted? Are you just mad at us now because we don't like the thing you wanted us to do more of? Like, I don't like. It's such a catch-22. So I'm curious to see people's thoughts and opinions in the comments. But for me, I am more apathetic after these 2 episodes than I was before, and honestly, I don't find the actual plot of this season that engaging at all. It feels created just so we can have a sequel season, as opposed to because it was a good idea. Pretty
much. It obviously did better for Amazon than we realized.
Apparently so. So we'll see if that continues. But let us know what you think in the comments, of course. Like and subscribe, all that stuff. You can get us on the Twitters at mailed_fuzz for channel updates. If you want to support the show, you can do that over at patreon.com/mailfuzztv for as little as $1 per month. But otherwise, that is us. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching TV, guys. Have you got any vanilla?